thundery showers, fog patches, moderate or good, occasionally very poor. Irish Sea, Shannon, northerly or northwesterly 3 to 5, fog patches and showers in Irish Sea, moderate or good, occasionally very poor in Irish Sea. Rockall, Malin, north or northwest 3 to 5, occasionally 6 at first in Malin, becoming variable 2 to 4. Fog patches, moderate or good, occasionally very poor. Hebrides, variable 2 to 4, fog patches, moderate or good, occasionally very poor. Bailey, westerly or northwesterly 3 to 5, lacking southeasterly 5 to 7 later, occasional rain, good, occasionally poor. Fair Isle, Faroes. Variable 2 to 4 in Fair Isle, otherwise southwest, veering northeast 3 to 5, veering southeast 4 to 6 later. Fog patches in Fair Isle, moderate or good, occasionally very poor in Fair Isle. And finally, southeast Iceland. Northeasterly, veering easterly or southeasterly 4 to 6, increasing 6 to gale 8 later, perhaps severe gale 9 later. Occasional rain, good, occasionally poor. And that's the end of the shipping forecast. Now, what's the weekend weather up to? In the studio today is Helen Willits.
Thanks, Arlene. We've had some warm sunshine today, some persistent coastal fog and some really intense thunderstorms. Now, they're still rumbling away. They've been focusing themselves across western England and Wales, Scotland too, but there's the odd one elsewhere. So we will see some local flash flooding issues continuing with a lot of rain in a short space of time because those storms are slow moving with little wind. So there's a Met Office warning running for a few hours yet, but they will fade overnight. The mist and the fog will return inland quite widely, the odd pocket of fog elsewhere, and a fresher night at 8 or 9. So as we start across England and Wales tomorrow morning, I think there will be quite a lot of misty grey weather around, quite cool coastal fog and inland fog as well. So it'll take a while to retreat back to the coast, but then we should have a lot of dry weather, some warm sunshine coming through for many as well, more so I think than today. So temperatures a little higher, 22, 23, but where that coastal fog lingers, around about 12 or 13, and the inland sunshine, strong as it is, may just trigger the odd heavy shower again, the odd thunderstorm. Now, for Northern Ireland, it should be mostly dry here, actually. A lot of cloud, though, through the day, particularly the north, only 15 with the northerly drift, but perhaps 20 with some sunshine coming out further south and east. And Scotland as well will have a lot of cloud and some sea fog, just 12 around the coast, but lifting to 20, 21 inland, just isolated thunderstorms once again, but just a little bit more cloud than we've seen today. Arlene.
Thanks, Helen. Helen Willits there at the BBC Weather Centre. Our Saturday night gets off to a roaring start here on Radio 4 in 15 minutes with a great lineup for loose ends. On tonight's show, Frank Skinner, Maxine Peake and comedian Rachel Fairbairn provide the chat and laughter in just a moment after we hear from Lauren Laverne.
My castaway this week is the Paralympic athlete Dame Sarah Storey.
It's that moment where everything has come together. There's a huge sense of relief because you've been building up to that moment of crossing the finish line for such a long time, and you've never dared to allow yourself to think about what a podium might look like.
Dame Sarah Storey is My Castaway on Desert Island Discs, tomorrow morning at 10.
BBC News at 6 o'clock. This is Jane Steele. Good evening. Thousands of people in South Devon hit by the outbreak of a waterborne parasite have been told they can safely drink their tap water again. Moscow claims to have taken control of another village in northeastern Ukraine, which has been the focus of a fresh Russian ground attack. Georgia's president has vetoed controversial legislation on foreign funding, but MPs from the ruling party are expected to override the move. South West Water says it has lifted restrictions for thousands of people in South Devon who were told to boil their water because it wasn't safe to drink. 46 cases of cryptosporidiosis, which causes stomach upsets and diarrhea, have been confirmed after the local water supply was contaminated. More than 100 other people have reported symptoms. The company said it had fixed a damaged valve in its network and drained a water tank at Hillhead Reservoir after tests showed the presence of the parasite earlier this week. South West Water said today's decision followed rigorous testing, but some 2,500 households of the 16,000 properties and businesses affected are still being told to boil their water. Our correspondent Esme Stallard reports from South Devon.
For days, residents and holidaymakers here in the seaside towns of Paignton and Brixham have been coming to pick up their bottled water. They'll be pleased to know that their trips to the water distribution point can now end. But for a small number of households closer to the affected faulty valve, South West Water have kept the boil water notice in place and are continuing investigations. The company's chief customer officer is Laura Flowerdew.
The important thing now is to look in the Hillhead area and make sure we absolutely have confirmed the source of the issue, to fix that issue, and then to make sure that we have got evidence that supports that the water is absolutely safe to drink. At this point, public health is obviously of paramount importance. And so we are looking to make sure we fix the problem, and we're absolutely assured, working with public health partners, that the water is safe.
South West Water have also announced that they will further increase the compensation for those residents still affected to £215. Though many people remain upset by what has unfolded here. One resident, Michaela Lewis, continued to give her 3-year-old tap water after she fell sick with the parasite because South West Water initially denied there was contamination.
I'm very angry. I understand that these things happen, and the response is what's really angered me. It's just not been good enough, and to say the water is safe when they didn't genuinely have adequate evidence to back that up, that's negligent.
The UK Health Security Agency said they would work with the council and community into next week to understand how widespread the outbreak was.
Russia says it has seized another village in the Kharkiv region in northeastern Ukraine as part of the new ground attack it launched more than a week ago. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned he expects Moscow to step up the assault. From Kiev, our Ukraine correspondent James Waterhouse reports.
For 8 days, Russia has grabbed more Ukrainian territory than it's managed in the past 18 months. Unlike the rest of the front line, this new northeastern axis has seen street-to-street fighting and targeted bombardments on a string of settlements close to the border. Today, Moscow has claimed to have taken control of a village called Staritsya as its forces inch closer to Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv. In an interview with AFP, President Zelensky maintained the situation in the surrounding region was under control. He said the offensive hadn't been a great success for Russia, before adding that the situation was sobering. He said the fighting was going deeper into Ukrainian territory. Ukraine's leader acknowledged some of his soldiers were becoming exhausted.
We need to staff the reserves. There are a serious number of brigades, which a large number of them are empty. We need to do this so the guys can have a normal rotation. Then their morale will be improved.
10,000 people and counting have been fleeing the northeastern border area since the new Russian offensive. Oleg Sinyahubov is the governor of the Kharkiv region.
Евакуація продовжується. Евакуювали вже більше 9 тисяч.
The evacuation continues. The pace has slowed down a bit. As for evacuation measures, we're receiving requests even from the areas where we can't evacuate people at the moment.
Mr. Zelensky claims his forces have only a quarter of the air defences needed to slow the Russian advance. He also estimates that his country needs at least 120 F-16 fighter jets to counter Moscow's air superiority. Despite promises from Western allies, not one jet is thought to have been used operationally by Ukraine. Kyiv is hoping the passing of a new controversial mobilization law and the arrival of billions of dollars of American military aid will shore up its fight. But this will take time to have an impact on the battlefield.
The president of Georgia has vetoed a controversial law on the foreign funding of charities and media outlets, which has sparked mass protests in the country. Salome Zurabishvili described the law as Russian in spirit and in essence, but she acknowledged that her veto is merely symbolic, as the governing party has the numbers to overrule her. Our correspondent Rehan Dimitri reports from the Georgian capital, Tbilisi. President Salome Zurabishvili fulfilled her promise and vetoed the law on the transparency of foreign funding. The bill requires non-governmental organizations and media outlets, which receive more than a fifth of their funding from abroad, to register as bodies pursuing the interests of a foreign power. But the president said the legislation was at odds with Georgia's constitution and represented an obstacle to Georgia's desire to grow closer to Europe. And she urged Parliament to abolish it. But the governing Georgian Dream Party, which introduced the legislation in the first place, can override the president's veto by simple majority. Tens of thousands of Georgians have been protesting against the proposed legislation for more than a month. They say its adoption marks a turning point for Georgia's democracy and believe that it will be used to silence government critics ahead of crucial parliamentary elections later this year. It's emerged that unpaid carers are having to repay a total of more than £250 million to the Department for Work and Pensions after many were unknowingly overpaid their allowance. Figures show the government is seeking to recover the money from more than 134,000 carers. More details from Dan Whitworth of Radio 4's Moneybox programme.
Nearly 1 million people across the UK who care for a loved one receive carers allowance, worth around £82 per week. Claimants face an earnings limit, though, and can't take home more than £151 a week. If they do, even by just a few pence, because it's what's known as a cliff edge benefit, they lose the entire allowance. Critics, including a growing number of MPs and charities, say it's a complicated system and especially difficult to stay on or below that earnings threshold week in, week out, when things like shift patterns and overtime can regularly change carers' take-home pay. Ren Seaward is a full-time carer for her husband John and is currently paying back £245 per month to settle a £5,000 debt with the DWP.
It's placed considerable financial strain on us, which makes many of the things that we could do within the home to make John's life easier and generally the family's life easier very difficult to access.
In 2019, a report by the Work and Pensions Committee warned carers could be heavily penalised for making honest mistakes, as errors in claims were not being spotted quickly enough by the DWP due to problems with its systems and staff shortages. Earlier this week, the now chair of that committee, Sir Stephen Timms, called for the National Audit Office to undertake an investigation into the issue. And this Wednesday, the Secretary of State, Mel Stride, is due to appear in front of that same committee. The DWP says the money owed includes historical debt. The carers' allowance expenditure is forecast to be £4.2 billion this year alone, and it's committed to fairness in the welfare system whilst protecting the public purse.
Banks and payment firms have lobbied the government to reduce the amount of compensation they have to pay victims of fraud. In a letter to the Treasury, the Payments Association called for the maximum payout for fraud victims to be cut to a third of the current amount. More from our business correspondent, Vishala Sripathma.
The Payments Association represents the High Street's biggest banks, including Barclays, Lloyds, NatWest, Santander, as well as smaller firms. It wants the maximum amount that people can be reimbursed after being defrauded to be cut from £415,000 to £30,000. The association is also challenging new rules due in October, aimed at making it easier for victims of authorised push payment fraud to get their money back. These are cases where people are persuaded to transfer money directly to a criminal. In the first half of last year, such cases cost victims £240 million. The Payments Association says the new rules could hit smaller firms in the industry as they're forced to pay out huge sums. But the consumer group Which says it's outrageous that payment companies want victims to bear the financial burdens of scams, and the focus should be on developing better technology with more effective security.
The Israeli military says that 50 militants have been killed in fighting in eastern Rafah, where it says it located dozens of tunnel shafts. According to the UN Palestinian Relief Agency, nearly 800,000 people have left the southern Gazan city since Israel began its military operation 12 days ago. In the past few minutes, the Israeli army said that it had retrieved the body of another hostage from Gaza. A close ally of the late Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has vowed never to give up the fight against Vladimir Putin, despite being badly hurt in a hammer attack in Lithuania. Leonid Volkov was beaten in March. The assault was less than 2 months after the sudden death of Mr. Navalny in an Arctic prison, for which the Kremlin was widely blamed. This report is from Laura Kunsberg, who has interviewed Mr. Volkov.
Bruised and battered, but not broken. Leonid Volkov was assaulted outside his own home in March. His car windows smashed, his legs attacked with hammers. He told me his attacker's message from the Kremlin was, "We know where you live, we can kill you, we are after you." Yet the close friend and colleague of the late Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, says he's undeterred.
He asked us to never give up and to defeat Putin and to build this beautiful Russia of the future that Alexei dreamed of for so many years is the only practical way to preserve his legacy and to make his ultimate sacrifice not to be in vain.
3 people were arrested last month over the hammer attack, which Mr. Navalny's longtime chief of staff believes was ordered by President Putin's regime. Mr. Volkov told me there had to be military, economic and political pressure on the Kremlin, describing Vladimir Putin as the greatest threat to the world in 80 years.
You can see the full interview with Leonid Volkov on Sunday with Laura Kunsberg on BBC One tomorrow morning at 9. The man charged with attempting to assassinate Slovakia's Prime Minister, Robert Fico, has appeared in court for the first time, where he was remanded in custody. The authorities haven't officially identified the suspect, but local media reports say he is 71-year-old Yuri Sintula. The Slovak Health Minister, Zuzana Dolinkova, said the Prime Minister's health had stabilised after he underwent surgery yesterday to remove dead tissue. Mr. Fico was shot several times at point-blank range. Football. Chelsea have won the Women's Super League for a 5th time in a row with a thumping win over Manchester United. And in boxing, Britain's Tyson Fury and Ukraine's Alexander Usyk are preparing for the first heavyweight unification fight for nearly a quarter of a century. With all the sporting action, here's Andy Barwell.
Yes, Chelsea are the Women's Super League champions for a 5th time in a row. Their 6-0 victory at Manchester United, coupled with Manchester City only winning 2-1 at Aston Villa, secured Chelsea the title on goal difference in what was their manager Emma Hayes' final game in charge.
We've had some big injuries this year, and having all the leaders on the pitch I felt was absolutely essential. It's a big occasion and you need the experience, and everybody delivered today.
In the Premier League, Brighton have announced that their head coach Roberto De Zerbi will leave the club after tomorrow's game against Manchester United. Celtic ended their successful Scottish Premiership title defence with a 3-2 win at home to St Mirren. And Tyson Fury will have a weight advantage of £30 going into the big fight with Alexander Usyk in Saudi Arabia tonight. It's for the undisputed world heavyweight boxing titles. That's the sports news.
With Andy Barwell. The paper napkin, which secured the footballer Lionel Messi's move to Barcelona more than 20 years ago, has been sold at auction for more than £750,000. Senior members of Barcelona Football Club made the pledge while visiting a tennis club in December 2000. Our Europe regional editor Paul Moss takes up the story.
The auction house described the item on sale as a standard Spanish waxy napkin, though it's safe to say the buyer is unlikely to use it to wipe their mouth. It carries a written commitment from Barcelona Football Club's then sporting director that he'll sign the 13-year-old player Lionel Messi. The commitment was then witnessed by the club's transfer advisor and an Argentinian football agent, and it's seen as marking the start of what would become a phenomenally successful career. It's still not known who paid £762,000 for the napkin. For some, it'll be seen as evidence of the devotion Lionel Messi still inspires. For others, proof that when it comes to top-level football, crazy amounts of money will follow not just the stars themselves, but even any artifacts associated with their playing.
2 Albanian men living in East London have been jailed for helping to smuggle migrants into Britain in lorries and light aircraft. Murteza Hilaj was sentenced to 3 years and 6 months, while Kreshnik Kadena was given 1 year and 8 months. The pair were convicted after an 8-year investigation by the National Crime Agency, which found the gang was charging Albanian migrants £10,000 each to bring them to the UK and provide them with fake passports. The headlines again. Thousands of people in South Devon hit by the outbreak of a waterborne parasite have been told they can safely drink their tap water again. Moscow claims to have taken control of another village in northeastern Ukraine, which has been the focus of a fresh Russian ground attack. Georgia's president has vetoed controversial legislation on foreign funding, but MPs from the ruling party are expected to override the move. While we've been on air, the Israeli military says it's recovered the body of another hostage from Gaza. BBC News.
And the news was presented by Jane Steele. It's all happening here on Radio 4 in just a moment when we join Frank Skinner and Maxine Peake. That's the guests in tonight's Loose Ends. But that's after a word from Anita Anand about tomorrow's Broadcasting House.
Hello. A huge week for public inquiries coming up. The Infected Blood Inquiry returns with its final report on Monday, and the Post Office inquiry finally gets to hear from ex-CEO Paula Vernels. So, do public inquiries really change things? Do they take too long? Do they need more muscle? We're going to hear from key figures from two mammoth inquiries of the past, Hillsborough and the murder of Stephen Lawrence. Conservative resignation letters aren't exactly rare these days, but few channel a fictional wizard from Middle-earth. Robert Halfon, the former higher education minister, tells us why he went all Gandalf with his goodbye. And the oldest recording of a cathedral choir was around a century ago. We're going to be bringing that sound bang up to date. That's all on Broadcasting House on Radio 4 tomorrow at 9.
Back to this evening on Radio 4, and writer and comedian Frank Skinner and actress Maxine Peake join Stuart McConey.
Hello and welcome to the show they're all calling Loose Ends, coming to you direct from Studio SO3 of Media City Salford, Greater Manchester's second most talked about new entertainment venue. As the Premier League season comes to an end, jostling for those cultural Champions League places are Maxine Peake, who stars in a mesmerising new production of the cult folk horror Play for Today Robin Redbreast at the Aviva Factory International Manchester. Frank Skinner is on the road again with another run of his acclaimed show, including a run at the Gaelgard Theatre this summer, 30 Years of Dirt. Manchester comedian Rachel Fairbairn will be pulling double duty at the Edinburgh Fringe this year, performing 2 shows and turning her hand to character comedy for the very first time. In her latest book, the biographer and historian Catherine Hughes explores how we became a nation of cat lovers and examines the life of the man who did more than anyone else to reform the image of the cat, the artist Louis Wain. And there's music from Phoebe Green and Willie Vlorton. Let's begin, though, with Frank Skinner, who promises lucky audiences who can get a ticket for the current UK and Ireland tour.
Don't make me feel bad about that.
30 Years of Dirt. No, I'm not keen to feel bad, but do you know what? It took me a couple of read-throughs to get the reference of 30 Years of Dirt.
Yes, it is a pun on a line from a football song I did, which was 30 Years of Dirt.
Yeah. But it's also more than that, isn't it? It's a reference to the fact that, have you cleaned up your act?
Well, I've been a comic for over 30 years now, and it's been quite rude, my act. But I always write clean stuff as well, but the audience is my editor/director. And the stuff they laugh at the most is the stuff I keep in. I don't have the conviction of my beliefs to keep anything in against their will. I'm forced to be what they used to call a blue comedian.
Blue material, yeah.
But I have fought that and tried to add some sophistication, and if you come to the show, you'll see the terrible failure of that struggle.
You did a panorama thing, didn't you, in 2009, where you experimented with leaving the swear words out and then bringing them back in.
I took out all the swearing one night, and I really missed about 6 examples of it. And so the next night, I just put them back in. They seemed to go even better because they were a bit rarer. But after 2 nights, I enjoyed the swearing so much on a personal level. I just put it back in, and I thought, I'll lose 5% just to be able to relax.
Yeah. I sometimes see comics and think you can see that they put it in there and it's kind of like a bomb they can drop that they know. Is it almost a guaranteed laugh, or is it not that simple?
There is no such thing as a guaranteed laugh. I've found on my journeying. I mean, we're talking this up as if it is a big theme. The only reason I've come up with any kind of theme for this comedy show is because people ask me what it's about. And really, it's about making people laugh and me trying as hard as I can.
Yeah.
But I've imposed the theme on it to give it some sort of gravitas.
Because you've got a little bit of a sort of cordial, not dislike, but suspicion of the themed
not so much
comedy
cordial
show.
as squash.
But you know, the themed comedy show, which is de rigueur now, isn't it?
It is, and I really admire people for that, and they have like serious bits in it where they talk about like sometimes quite tragic things that have happened in their life, and I can see the lure of that because they're easier to write than jokes. But I'm lost in a terrible time warp of being a sort of vaudevillian comedian that just wants to do jokes.
Yeah, people who travel a lot, comedians, bands, etc., quite often say, "Oh, I hate the hotels, I hate the constant travel." You quite like all that, don't you?
Oh God, that's my favourite bit. I would honestly consider, if I didn't have a show, just touring anyway. I love the thrill when you open a hotel room for the first time and thinking,
not knowing
what's going to be in there. Sometimes I get a greeting, I checked into a hotel in Nottingham last week. There was a large slide with welcome written on it in chocolate and a single strawberry. So not too big a welcome, but thanks for coming anyway.
I go straight for the wardrobe, the hangers. The hangers is the mark of a good hotel, isn't it? Whether they trust you not to steal them or not, or whether they've got those ones that are kind of welded into place.
Yeah. I mean, I actually stayed in a hotel last night, and they've locked down the shower gel and the shampoo.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt so offended. I mean, I know times are hard, but I mean, I haven't been reduced to that.
If you want to say, if I do turn to a life of crime, it won't be shower gel that I'm stealing, will it?
Having said that, I have done that. I have got like small travel bottles, and sometimes if it's locked down, I'll get my little bottle and I'll put some in the thing.
It's you that's
It's me, yeah.
You said that your son thinks Alan Carr is funnier than you. Is this a cause of anger?
No, it just suggests the age group he's appealing to.
Yeah.
He's 12, my son. No, Alan Carr's very funny. Obviously, I don't think for a second any other comic is funnier than me. But, no, I had to take that on the chin. I think as you're always warned that children will start saying spiteful, undermining things as they get older. I didn't think it'd be this soon and this hard.
But he's quite funny. You find him very funny, don't you?
I find him incredibly funny. He said a thing that this might take a minute, but
that's fine.
Okay. But when he was very small, he had his eyes tested at school, so then he drew his own eye chart, and I had to say the letters. This was when we did them all phonetically, so I'd say kicking, de, and then I got to one. I said, "Is that R?" He looked. It wasn't a very good one. He went, "No." I said, "Is it A?" He said, "No." And I thought, oh God, I want to get this right for him. I said, "Is it air?" I said, "No, I don't know what it is." He said, "It's a balloon." And I thought, to be fair, he never said they were all going to be letters. That was me just assuming.
I would say to people who don't know this, because it is fabulous, you do a poetry podcast.
I do.
It's brilliant. Obviously, you listen to it after you've listened to all the radio programs like this, but it is absolutely brilliant. It's both warm and accessible and funny, and your readings of the poems, I don't mean literally, but that as well, are very nuanced and insightful. So has this been a long passion of yours?
Yeah, well, I was asked to read a Lawrence Ferlinghetti poem in the school assembly when I was 11, called Sometime During Eternity, was about Jesus coming to earth as a jazz player rather than as a sort of religious figure. And I didn't know that poetry could be like that. And then I discovered the Mersey poets, that book that sort of changed the lives for a lot of people. Yeah. In fact, I was talking to Roger McGough about it recently, saying, literally, you changed my life, Roger.
I always tell people that you started your comedic career comparing at the pub round the corner from where I live in Burwood. But is that not true, the Births Tavern?
It is true, yeah. I was well famous in Birmingham and the Black Country. I really was. I used to do a gig there and a gig in King's Heath in Birmingham every Wednesday, Thursday. They were always packed out, and I wrote new material every week.
Wow.
And it was so joyous, and things were so simple and lovely then. And for the first time in my life, I'd found a job that I started to realise I could properly do. And it was, it was thrilling.
And this is a big tour, you've got a big run in the summer, your enthusiasm unabated for all of that. Well, I know we know you love the hotels, but the time on the stage is still the same thrill.
It's still, absolutely. I mean, I'm actually extending this now, October, November as well, because I would happily just tour every night, I think. I just like being up there, I like talking to the audience, but I like all the other stuff. I like sitting in the dressing room, drinking tea, you know, driving in the night, listening to the news at 1 in the morning and stuff like that. It's like, you know, it's great.
Yeah. Tickets for Frank's show, 30 Years of Dirt, are on sale now, including that 3-week summer run at the Guildford Theatre in London from August the 5th. It's time for some music now. Manchester's own rising star and indie pop songwriter Phoebe Green is embracing change in her new EP, Ask Me Now. You're saying it's coming out of a period of transition. Can you share with us what that means?
Yeah, over the past, year or so, I've just really grown into myself, and I think accepting what I was growing into has been, the best thing for me.
Great.
Yeah.
What are you going to play for us?
The song's called I Could Love You.
Well, please, for us now.
Thank you. Growing out of growing pains, just find the words. Bite my nails until they bleed, chewing on my gold. Something doesn't feel right. Maybe that's a good thing. Making it uncomfortable, making it off-putting, sinking to the shape of it. I shouldn't speak right now, I shouldn't touch you, but if you asked me now, I could. It shouldn't wear me down, it shouldn't crush me, but if you asked me now, I could love you. I don't know your skin yet, I don't know your friends. You give yourself in spoonfuls that are easy to ingest. I don't know your body yet, take a guess. I have seen what insides with the tipping of your dress, sinking to the shape. I shouldn't speak right now, I shouldn't touch you, but if you asked me now, I could. It shouldn't wear me down, it shouldn't crush me, but if you asked me now, I could love you. I shouldn't speak right now, I shouldn't touch you, but if you show me how, I could love you. It shouldn't scare me now, I shouldn't rush you, but if you asked me now, I could love you. I shouldn't speak right now, I shouldn't touch you, but if you asked me now, I could love you. It shouldn't wear me down, it shouldn't crush you, but if you asked me now, I could love you.
Whoa! Phoebe Green, and you should introduce your sister at the Joanna.
This is Lucy Green. Yeah, she's 22. 23. She's 23. We literally live together and are in a band together and are still.
You're like the Von Trapp.
Yeah.
Truly.
Absolutely. And you've had your songs in TV shows like Geek Girl and Extraordinaries. That must be a thrill.
It is crazy. I think I've always wanted to feel like an artist that can soundtrack moments and memories and stuff, so it's been amazing. It's all I've ever wanted.
And presumably the check for £1 million it comes to the Dice Hand.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But it's not changed.
I'm so humble.
Oh, no, it has, he said. Lovely. Thank you so much. Ask Me Now, the new EP from Phoebe Green, is available from the 24th of May. If you want to see it performed live, She's playing a special headline show at the Grace on the 6th of June in